Hello everyone. Welcome back for our second positive talk of 2025. We are on episode 330, which is insane. Can't believe that I've been doing this for so long. Bringing in 2025 on some great notes, bringing in some amazing coaches. So I'm super excited. Name because my little AI machine over there has a similar name, and she likes to respond every single time I talk. So we will go ahead and get started. Hello.
Hello.
How are
There
you?
you are. I'm doing so great. How are you?
I'm doing well. How was your toast?
Oh, you saw that? Yes, it was good. I was like, you know what? I'm getting hungry because this 12 o'clock time is usually my lunchtime. I was like, I should probably just like grab something really quick before we start.
I love it.
Yes.
Awesome.
How are you? It's so good to see you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, it's been quite the start. I mean, there's so many things going on all over Instagram right now that I'm just like, you know what? Just like center yourself and send out good energy because people need it right now. And I
Yeah.
think that that is what we need to do. I don't think people understand the impact that that can
Mhm.
have,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to the people in California. Here in Richmond, we are out of water in most of the city. A pipe burst because of low temperatures. So
Oh my
people have
goodness.
been surviving off of these guys.
Oh wow, I
But
didn't know that about that in Richmond. Of course, I knew what was going on in California.
yeah, so
No.
we're getting through it. But I'm excited for our conversation today, and I want to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself so people know who you are, and then we can dive into a conversation.
Absolutely. And just to quickly hit on what you said earlier, I mean, you started these conversations in the midst of one of the darkest times as that, in a modern day society that we experienced during COVID. So this is really just reinforcing the importance of having these positive conversations and to be the light in challenging, dark, you know, uncertain times. And so thank you for being consistent with these. I'm honored to be number 330. um, and yes, I just wanted to kind of add that to it. But thank you so much for having me. For
Yeah,
those who don't know me, my name is Alexa De Leon, and I'm a mindset and alignment coach. I help soul led, ambitious women who know they're meant for more, align with their highest self. And what that means is essentially most of the people and the women that I work with, they have this like desire for a life that they know that they're capable of, but they keep hitting the same walls, and so they find themselves stuck repeating the same sort of patterns and feeling really frustrated by that. And so what I help them do is help them step into their power, take their power back essentially, and help them realize, what their life could be and bridging that gap. So we'll talk about, healing our inner child, rewiring our limiting beliefs, and creating the identity that's in alignment with their highest self, so they can actually embody it and live the life that they want and create the results that they want in their life.
I love that. And you explained that so beautifully, and I love that because I've worked with a lot of different coaches, and I went through the Jay Shetty program, and I know that being able to say what you do in such a passionate, beautifully worded way is a challenge in itself to connect with that and know what you want to help people with. So that was so beautifully said and so
Thank you.
clear and understood how you are capable of helping people.
Mhm.
So I wanted to give you props for that because even I, on my journey of being a coach, that I was like, what is my spiel? Like, what do I do?
Yes, I
And
totally relate.
so I love that. And I want to say, like, you and I connected through someone who we both look up to and see as an
Mhm.
amazing light in this world, John.
Hosted.
And
Yeah.
as soon as we connected through that chat, I was like, I love her energy. I want to make sure that her and I stay connected. And I'm glad that you jumped on here to do a positive talk. And I'm excited to dive into this conversation today because I know that it's the new year.
Mhm.
I'm a huge person when it comes to it doesn't have to be the new year to start, but we're here at the new year. And I think this is a fantastic time to be like, hey, what do I want my 2025 to look like?
Yes.
And what do I not want to bring from 2024 into this new year? And I know that as coaches, we do have so many beautiful tools, and I'm
Mhm.
excited to hear some of the things that you have to offer
Yes.
the people who are listening.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yes, I just want to touch on a couple of things you said. Super excited to get into all of that. I am also of the same mindset. It's never too late to start a new year, because even though, it's already January 9th and we're still in January, first of all, but even if you wanted to start in June, I mean, that could be the start of your year for you. These are just metrics that we go by. And there is this energetic shift with the new year that feels like a kind of new leaf or a new
Yeah.
start, but you can literally start whenever, right? And so this applies to anyone who's ready to make any type of upgrade or change in their life. And then I also wanted to just say thank you for complimenting me on that, because I totally get it. It's been a journey for me to be able to get to the point where I can confidently and clearly share what I do and how I help people. And even then, I find myself being like, oh, I just have so much more to say. But I appreciate the feedback. That's a good compliment for someone who's worked on it.
Yeah.
And I
So
also connected with you in the beginning. So I'm really happy we've, stayed in touch and we've been able to make this happen.
yeah, and I think one of the biggest things that when it comes to my journey and making New Year's resolutions or deciding that I want change in my life in general, it's been realizing that you can have big goals, but that can't be the only part that you set, because those big goals can be daunting
Mhm.
and really easy to make that one mistake and give up so quickly. And
Really.
I realized that I kept setting myself up for failure by not breaking it down into bite sized pieces and breaking it
Mhm.
down into, hey, you're a human. So
Totally.
many times people set goals and I'm like, you're not a computer. Like, you're not
Straight
going to
up.
be perfect. Remember, you might get sick.
Yeah.
Things might pop up. Like
Life
the beginning
happens.
of one year, I had
Totally.
like a big trip planned
Mhm.
and my tire went flat and I had to replace all four tires because of the way my car's set up. And it was
Yeah.
just like all the money I had put in savings to say this is for this trip went straight to my tires. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, don't let it get to you. Don't let it get to you. You can still figure this out. Let's plan. Don't let it get to you. But life happens and
Yeah.
you want to set goals that allow life to happen. Don't set
Totally.
goals that are so perfectly put that one little thing that doesn't go right offsets the whole plan. It will throw you off and really hurt.
Absolutely. I can totally resonate with that. I think most of us can resonate with the idea of setting these big goals, having these sort of audacious plans for your life, and then life getting in the way. And obviously, there's things that are outside of our circumstances. Life does happen, but sometimes we're just in the process of working towards a big goal and we didn't make it more doable for us in the beginning. So we give up and then we feel awful about ourselves, and that affects us, affects what we believe about ourselves, and then what we believe about ourselves ends up affecting what we think, what we feel, and the actions that we do or don't take, and that creates our results, our experiences, and it becomes this loop. And that's what I mean by those cycles. And that's very much in line with like this idea of self-sabotage. And so I'm excited to get into that and help people figure out how they can start to become aware of their unconscious self-sabotaging patterns and ways they can start breaking free from that, as well as going into what you talked about earlier with making goals or setting up goals that are flexible enough for life to happen. And so recently in my recent post, I've been talking about how setting goals doesn't work. And it's not that I'm anti goals. I think goals are amazing to drive our focus. I just
Yeah.
think it's missing out on like a really big piece of the picture. At the end of the day, our goals actually are to help us become someone we want to be. And so that's actually the question that we need to ask ourselves. It's who we want to become. How do they handle certain situations? So in the situation that life does happen, what qualities does that version of me have so that I can handle that situation and overcome it with grace or resilience? How do I handle that? Right? Am I going to be the kind of person that like burns and crashes and gives up and is just like, oh, well, forget about this, right? I'm just going to give up. Or I'm going to be the person that's like, ooh, okay, that stung, that hurt. I didn't like it, but I'm bigger than this. And I know I'm capable of overcoming it. And you know what? Life happens and we're going to roll with the punches, right? And so asking yourself who you want to become helps you actually embody the vision and the goals that you have for your life. And what can end up happening again is the self-sabotaging patterns get in the way, which is why it's so important to know ourselves and become masters of ourselves in order to really, line everything up.
Yeah. And I love what you were saying there. And one of the things that came to mind when you were saying that is I made a shift of the people and the environments that I allowed myself to be in, because my old environment and my old people I used to hang out with had a certain pattern that happened when things came up. And when you live in a environment that you've lived in with patterns that you perform when certain things happen, it's really hard to change your pattern. And a lot of times we don't even realize that we're living in a reality and there's a completely different reality over here that
Yeah.
responds very differently to situations.
Yeah.
Surrounding myself with coaches, it reinforced the positive things that I was trying to teach myself,
Yeah.
because everyone around me was doing it. And it wasn't something bad happens, we're going to stew on it, we're going to sit here and just allow it to destroy everything we've worked so hard to create. I
Right.
surrounded myself with coaches that said, "Yeah, that sucked. Now what? Now
Right.
what are we going to do?" And I think that that's a beauty about people who start working with a coach.
Totally.
Your coach may be the first person that you add to your circle that has
Mm,
that mindset
so
that you're
good.
trying to claim,
So true.
because that's what I started to realize was like,
Yeah.
I am starting to build a circle of people that are responding to life the way that I need to respond to it if I want to obtain the goals that I'm trying to obtain.
Right.
And a lot of times our friends, they'll say that they're there for us. Let's go to the gym. Sure, I'll be your accountability partner. But if they're just like us, where we'll find any excuse like, oh, it's raining, I don't want to walk in the rain. Jim, we can skip it today,
Yeah,
which
totally.
then is tomorrow as well. When you've got a coach, it's like, let's celebrate the rain. Let's dance in the rain as we
Yes.
go to the gym.
Right.
That becomes your mindset, and it
Yeah.
slowly becomes your subconscious mindset. And I think that that's really important for people to realize.
Totally. Oh my God. Everything you just said, I was like, yesing all the way because I was like, oh, preach. Your environment has so much to do with the way that you think and the cycles that you're a part of, right? You're a byproduct of the five people closest to you is like one of the most popular sayings out there. And it couldn't be more accurate. And such a good point too, that when you change your environment and the people that you surround yourself with, it can be a game changer, because you can just be sometimes not even aware of what's possible or how other people are until you get around people like that. And for many people, it is often a coach for the first time that is that sort of gateway to realizing what else is out there and how else people think, and that person that can really hold the vision for you, because it's not that your friends don't love you or don't want to support you. I mean, the reason they said yes to being your accountability partner is because they love you and want to help you, and they know that you're capable of something, but life also happens to them, right? And so when you have a dedicated person in your life who's there to be your partner in the journey, in the process, who's dedicated to your success and growth the same way that you are, if not more, that's the money right there. Like that in itself, there's no price on it. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Totally agree with
I
that.
mean, like you said, life happens. And the nice thing about
Yeah.
having a person who has those grooves deeper in for those healthier habits is
Yeah.
when life happens, it bumps us out for a second and we fall back into our groove of making that healthy choice. When our
Yes.
friends that are in this building a new groove like we are in are there, it's easy for them to be bumped out and not be able to pull themselves back to that groove. So as a
Yes.
coach, we are dedicated to pulling people back to that strong, healthy space.
Yeah.
And the amount of times that I've worked with people, I'm like, nope, you came in, we're pulling you back and pulling you
Yeah.
back to this groove. We're not creating this one over here again.
Right.
And it's really important for people to realize, like, the nice thing about coaches is we are 100% on your side
Mm-hmm.
for you getting to that goal.
Right.
We don't have any selfish reason to
Want to
like
help
pull you in any
you.
other
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's like
Right.
we don't say no to you moving across the country or the world because we're going to feel distant from you. Like, we're like, is that what you want? Let's go. Where
Right.
we don't even realize the system. I, even reflecting on mine, when my friend was talking about moving to California, I was like, ooh, I don't want you to move to
Right.
California. I want you to be close to me, but go. Like, my energy, I'm sure she could
Yeah.
tell that I was like, ooh, I don't really want you.
There's
Can you stay?
resistance.
I can
I
be
hear that.
supportive, but there's still that emotional like part that I'm connected to where I'm like, I don't want that to happen.
Right.
As coaches, we are there professionally there
Yeah.
to motivate you towards your best self. And if your best self is in California, not where the fires
Go
are,
live your life.
yep,
Yeah.
go for it.
Hopefully not. Totally. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm really glad that you brought those points up because, yeah, I mean, having coaches in my life is a really big reason why I'm here. And as a coach, I'm constantly trying to be authentic and vulnerable with my own struggles because oftentimes I think there's a stigma within the mental health and personal growth community. If you're a therapist, a coach, or anything in that realm, I think sometimes people like have this idea that we don't struggle or that we don't go through like challenges. But what you said earlier about resilience, about being able to bounce back, I call it bounce back ability. It's just a shorter bounce back period for the most part, you know, because we've learned the skills and the tools to be able to pick ourselves back up, and we know how to uh kind of experience what we need to experience, learn what we need to learn from from the situation, from the experience itself, and be able to use that to grow and to, you know, get to a higher level or to upgrade. We know life is for us. So when things happen to us, we know that it's not, again, to us, it's for us. Like, okay. And even in the moment, it might not feel that way. You could still feel the frustration. You could still feel the doubt, but you come out of it much quicker. And then having someone like that in your corner, I mean, that's why I assigned myself as an alignment coach, because it's always about getting into alignment. And there are several ways we can do that, but thanks for bringing that up because 100% feel like that's a missed that's just like talking point when it comes to coaching and having a coach in your life.
Yeah. And one thing that I wanted to touch on with you, especially since you exist specifically as a coach for women,
Yeah.
is the challenges that women face in the world that someone like me may not face because I'm male. And I think that that's something that a lot of people, I had a lot of female clients and I had a lot of female friends, and I got put in my place when I was speaking to two of my very powerful female friends,
Mhm.
when I was just like, all you have to do is do this, because I society has taught me that I'm allowed to have an opinion,
Yeah.
whereas there have been societal norms put in place where when a woman does the same thing, there's a different reaction. And that is something that women have had to navigate and mentally prepare themselves for in spaces.
Yeah.
And I told someone else in a positive talk where there was a book written by someone who was trans, who transitioned from male to female, and they
Mm,
wrote so beautifully how different it was
your
when
experience.
they're like, when I was a
Right.
male, I would make a statement and it was never second guessed, it was never questioned,
Mm,
it was just taken as a fact.
yeah.
And when they walked into the world as a woman and made a statement, they were shocked by how they had to defend every opinion or statement, whether it was fact or something that they personally believed in.
Yeah.
They had to defend everything. So I think that that's an important thing to discuss,
Yeah.
because that is also a part of people's journeys. They have to
Mhm.
navigate men who may not be aware of the challenges that they faced to stand in the same room as
Yeah.
them. And I think that that's really important to talk about.
Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up. I know there's so many double standards, you know, when it comes to a man and a woman and their experience, especially when it comes to being in business or just being someone who, even when it comes to just standing up for yourself, right? Or just saying the simplest of things, the way that you're received can be so different. And that's one of the biggest parts of what I strive to do with my clients. When I say take their power back, this is a really big part of that, because there's so many stories that we tell ourselves that we've been convinced that our voice doesn't matter. and that when we do say our voice, it's mean, or it's not it's rude, right? But when a man says it, it's not rude, but when we say it, it's rude, right? um how can we be like direct but respectful, and that just be who we are? Can that just be standing in our power versus being viewed as a bitch, or as someone who's like just rude? Like, we have to rewire the way that we look at this, and that's such a big piece of it. Most of the women that I work with, and this is kind of paralleled, are people pleasers. And I know women, I think, tend to be more people pleasing than men in my experience. From what I feel, women adapt to that sort of tendency most, and that's actually one of the self-sabotaging, most common self-sabotaging patterns we see. I am an overcoming people pleaser myself.
Mhm.
And that's a really big one, because if you're constantly living to please others, to make others more comfortable, to receive the validation from others, like, where is your power? Where is your truth? Where's your voice? And women need to be heard, and they need to be seen, and they need to take up space, because there's so much value, obviously, in all people. But there's so much misvalue when they don't do those things, when they don't step into their power. And one of my greatest just missions in life is to help women realize that, realize their potential. And for many reasons, women usually are the matriarchs of their family, and they are usually the caretakers, and they're the ones that are mostly responsible for how the next generation, obviously the parents, both parents, whether it's male, female, both important, but they're just moms, right? I think of myself as, identify as a mom. So um, I think about the generational cycles that I'm creating, and how I'm developing my, I have a daughter. So how am she's looking at me. How am I speaking to myself? What kind of decisions am I making? Am I just living for only her, or does she see me also living a life that takes care of me, right? Does she see that my voice is important, right? So all of those things, it has a ripple effect. And that's why it's so important that women prioritize themselves, because they're the ones that are like, I don't have time for myself, or I don't want to spend money on myself, or I don't want to, they just put themselves last. And this is just such a common thing with women, unfortunately. So taking your power back is all about really realizing that you're worth it, and claiming that self-worth, and stepping into that with more confidence, and starting with self-love. So
Yeah.
yeah, I can talk about this forever, but thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, I love it. And I think that it's important for us to realize that when it
Mhm.
comes to women's view of the world, there have been so many opportunities for women's voices to be heard,
Yeah.
and there's someone not allowing it to happen.
Mhm.
And we're missing that opportunity because women do make up a larger portion of the population. And when it comes to anything, we need to make sure that we are serving. A
Yeah.
small example that I saw was just when we had an event at our company that we were hosting for getting new clients and bringing more people into our clientele. A man was responsible for getting snacks, and he went out and got the messiest things that could ever exist. Like,
It's so
he got
funny.
caramel apples with like the caramel with all the nuts on it. He
Oh my
got like
gosh.
this stuff that like comes out and is super sticky. And as soon as he walked
No
in,
napkins.
as soon as he walked in with all that stuff, all the women were like, "That was a dumb idea. That was stupid," because women instantly think, okay, someone's going to have to clean up after this. Kids are going to be present at this. Like, all these
Right.
thoughts that exist because a woman has to think about all of those things
Right.
instantly. As soon as he walked through the door, every single one of them were sitting there thinking, even I was thinking it because I had my nephew living with me for the first 5 years, and I was like, oh god, we haven't had those in our house for a while because that ends up on the walls in every nook and cranny. But like, that's just a small example
Totally.
of something that instantly a woman knows better to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like you were talking about, like the way you respond to the world, your daughter is seeing that. That's
Mm-hmm.
also a thought of when you go into places and you're a leader and seeing everyone in this space
Yeah.
is going to be impacted by this new thing that I implement.
Yeah.
That is a thought that you have. I've been in a lot of spaces where it's man, 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 old man, old man, old man, old man, all white, white, white,
Right.
white, white. And when I hear them
Mm-hmm.
speak, you can tell that diversity isn't something that they're aware of. You can tell that women and the things that they navigate through are not being spoken about at this table. And when you don't
Mm-hmm.
have that, it impacts everyone.
Absolutely.
It's not just women that are being impacted. Everyone gets impacted when you don't sit there and assume you are serving a diverse group of people.
Absolutely. Multiple perspectives are important to get the whole picture. And you're only speaking to one person if you only have one representation of a person, you know? And we all have, you know, of course, there's like different norms and standards for men and women, you know, based on the general population. But I couldn't agree more with everything you said. And, you know, something that came to mind as you were speaking was just this idea of, you know, one of the biggest goals for me last year, or things that I wanted to embody, was stepping more into my feminine energy. I think, you know, obviously with the patriarchal society that we live in, women have also conditioned themselves to feel like they need to fit that mold of being able to work and behave and act the same way as a man in order to just compare and be seen. Like, you have to kind of step up to that super dominant masculine
Yeah.
energy. And the society in our world, we're not it's not created for women. It really just isn't. Even when it comes down to the, like, our bodies physiologically and our cycles, like, we are not, our energies, our hormones, none of that is made to sustain, like, you know, being able to create typical success, right? And so I've been redefining what success looks like in a more balanced way. Not to say anything negative about masculine energy, because it's important, right? We need to have a balance of both, because they each have strengths. Women have strengths, like you mentioned, like, we just know those things when it comes to, like, we're a little bit more thoughtful and think about those things, like, oh, the candy apple, probably not the best choice because da 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 da, right? And men have their strengths too, right? And we need men. We need both of these energies to come together in a more balanced way. And to what your point is, I don't think it's balanced. I don't think it's all represented. I'm hopeful that it's getting to be more, yeah, you know, getting to that place, and that there's movement towards that vision. And it requires more women to step up, and for more men to make space for that, and to step into their feminine energy as well, to be able to receive and allow and slow down and know that it's okay for them to, because it's an energetic shift, I think, that affects all beings, like you said.
Yeah. And I feel like that leads us right to a conversation of what do you think are some things that are sabotaging people from stepping into their power? Because you mentioned a little bit of how people think that they have to step into that really intense masculine energy to
Yeah.
be of use in this world, which I have been resistant to my entire life. I am not one of those people. And there have been several times when I stepped into leadership roles and they're like, you're going to need to be more aggressive if you want to be a good leader. And I'm like, that's not me. And I loved it that I stuck it out and proved them wrong, because I am a more nurturing
Yeah.
person. I am a more, the whole team needs to succeed or we all fail. So
Right.
I will nurture everyone's needs and see that this whole team has strengths. You don't all have to be like this guy, this aggressive, pushy, in your face, like screaming, this is the one way to do it. And if it's not this way, you're wrong. When I was like, okay, what are your strengths? You're really friendly. Let's put you in a position, in a space where you are oriented towards people.
Yeah.
You are really task oriented. Let's put you in a place where you don't have very many distractions and you can just get work done. When you're in that mindset, it's great. But there are so many women who have that ability that are doing it.
Yeah, they're
They,
doing it.
most of the times, you've got a male in that leadership role, but you've
Yeah.
got the person with that feminine touch, that feminine energy,
Yeah.
doing all the same work in the shadows to keep
Mm-hmm.
this function going.
Right.
but she's getting zero credit for that because we don't realize if we didn't have that, people's
Mhm.
emotions wouldn't have been acknowledged. People's like rough days where it's pushing them to quit or pushing them anywhere else in a negative mindset.
Yeah.
It's not that pushy masculine energy that keeps them going. It's the feminine energy showing up. And a lot of times we need them to step up into the leadership position and be paid for that and be recognized for the hard work that they're doing already in the shadows.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. You know, when it comes to self-sabotage, there's so many ways that it can show up. It's such a sneaky thing that pops up in our life, and we don't usually become aware of it until after the fact. And then we think about it and then we feel really bad about ourselves. And I want to kind of break a couple myths around self-sabotage before we kind of get into the nitty-gritty. And I think most people have this belief or idea that self-sabotage is like this self-inflicted self-destruction, or like this almost masochistic form of just like doing bad by ourselves. And then it creates like this really just sort of negative energy and belief about who we are, and that couldn't actually be further than the truth.
Hmm.
Self-sabotage is actually a form of self preservation. And most often it's a protection mechanism that is, our minds, it's literally wired to protect us and to keep us safe, to keep us comfortable. And so anything that appears to our mind as uncomfortable, unfamiliar, or not safe for any particular reason, it will do everything to protect us from that. Right. And so self-sabotage is usually self-preservation, or it's an unconscious, it's a maladaptive coping mechanism to an unconscious need. And so what that means is that we have this need that we're not aware about that is getting met by this self-sabotaging behavior. So to get to like the root cause of these self-sabotaging patterns is the only way to actually break free from the pattern. But also to add to that, we're not stuck there. Like it's something that can be broken and something that can be rewired. And it just takes knowing that this is not a personality flaw. This is not you, that you're the problem. This is not just how you are. This is something you learned. This is something that your brain is doing because it wants to protect you, and that's its main function. And it wants to get your needs met. And that's how it's doing it. It's just doing it in an unconscious way. And so the first step is really to understand the function of your mind so that you can work with it and not against it. And the second step is getting aware of what is triggering these unconscious patterns, because there's usually a deep belief or some type of traumatic situation, depending on the type of trigger for these unconscious patterns. And it doesn't even have to be a big traumatic experience. It could just be tiny little minuscule trigger traumas that have happened over time and have built up to believe, creating this really strong belief that's like creating essentially your whole reality, your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings, your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. And so one of the most common ones, specifically, like I mentioned earlier, that I deal with specific with women is perfectionism and people pleasing. A lot of that comes with like other forms of self sabotage, such as neglecting your own needs, overthinking, having a really like negative inner critic, just really negative self-talk, things like that, right? And these are all like minor and big forms of self-sabotage, and the ways that we just like beat ourselves down or stop ourselves from moving forward, or completely just slow down our progress. Perfectionism is one of the ones that even has almost like this badge of honor, where it's like, I'm a perfectionist. So I, really want to make sure my work is good. And it's like, should that be a badge of honor?
Yeah.
And so perfectionism was one of the most sneaky ones, because and for a long time I personally didn't identify as a perfectionist, and I thought perfectionism for the longest time was actually like, being a perfectionist to me meant you do everything perfectly, like you're just someone who's super detail oriented and you make everything look amazing and your work is always outstanding. And I was like, oh, that's not me, I'm not perfect, so definitely not a perfectionist. And then one day I went to therapy, And it was a new therapist that I was meeting it with. And we were like sitting down and we were like, okay, she's like, what are your goals with therapy? And what are the things that you want to work on? And I started creating like this huge list of things. This was a few years ago. And she's like, can I stop you for a second? And I'm like, sure. She's like, are you a perfectionist? And I was like, no. She's like, are you sure? And I'm like, she then went on to explain to me what a perfectionist actually was. And perfectionism is living by the shoulds, or it's all or nothing thinking that it has to be perfect or it just can't be good enough at all, right? And um, there's this idea that something has to, yeah, again, be perfect before we even put it out there, and we just give up half before even starting because we're like, okay, well, if I'm not capable of doing something well enough, or if it doesn't look perfect, or if I don't have all the steps figured out, then I'm not going to take action. So that completely sabotages us from even learning or growing, and that's part of the process, right? She gave me some really great like tools and mindset hacks, like progress over perfection, right? And breaking down your goals even smaller, which were amazing. They were very, very, very helpful. But I still found myself self-sabotaging. I still found myself in the same pattern of setting these really big audacious goals and setting myself up for failure because I knew I would just give up, get frustrated, and then think that I was not worthy of success. I was not meant for anything big in my life, even though I felt like I was, because I just kept failing. I just kept giving up, or I wasn't consistent, right? And that is where I realized that's the actual problem. It's the belief that I have that I'm not capable, that I'm not consistent, that I'm not meant for success. It's actually creating the self-sabotaging pattern. And so I went on a personal journey, and this is how I've started, now becoming so passionate about helping other women realize this for themselves. And this is just one example with perfectionism, but figuring out what are the things that happened to them or that created this meaning that now has this belief running their whole life, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a process. There's a process of, again, the understanding of what your mind is doing, awareness of what your particular core root challenges are, releasing that, healing that, right, through your inner child, through your nervous system, rewiring your limiting beliefs into an empowering identity and stepping into the true version of you, the version of you that doesn't have these fears and doubts holding them back. Not that you don't have them, you just don't allow them to hold you back anymore because you're telling yourself a new story. You're embodying a new identity, and you're stepping into that with action and follow through. And again, it's not like you're not experiencing challenges, you just handle them differently. And it's not about being perfect, it's about being authentic. It's about being you, it's about being truthful and being able to understand yourself so that you can master yourself and actually move forward and not allow self-sabotage to completely sabotage you. And then, the last part is really just figuring out, okay, what are the steps that I need to maintain this? So this isn't just like a quick fix, right? This is deep work. We need to understand that this isn't like okay, well, I fixed the cycle once and I'm free of it. It's an ongoing cycle, ongoing process, because as we work on ourselves, and this, we will always be presented with new opportunities, challenges, opportunities, right, for us to grow and to almost get to like that next level unlocked of like, all right, well, I just expanded a little more. I just grew here a little bit more. Or I thought I was over this, but I guess I wasn't as much as I thought. So I need to heal a little bit more here. I need to rewire this belief a little bit more. And you just continue to expand as an individual. That journey never ends, but you figure out how to do it in a sustainable way so that you can continue living in alignment with your truth and who you really are, your highest self.
I love that. And there's so many beautiful nuggets in there. And when you said like it's an ongoing thing, what I thought about was just like, for me, showing up in the world, everywhere I went, it was almost like I had to reintroduce myself. Like,
Mm,
I let spaces know, like, this is who I am. Like, this is who you're getting today, in case you're unaware. Like, I will not take any of this crap that other spaces allow to happen. I'm introducing myself
mm,
right now. We will not be sexist in this room. We will not be homophobic, transphobic, racist. None of that's going to happen here. And I will hold space for that. So if you can't exist in that space, see yourself out now, because it will
mm,
not be tolerated in this space. And just showing up in that space, I
How
was
did
just
that
like
feel?
empowering
Yeah.
because I didn't go into the space like I used to do, feeling small, like I had no right to
Yeah.
say that. It was
Mm-hmm.
like, no, I'm controlling this space.
Mm.
And
Oh my
I went into 2025 telling people like, I'm sorry I ever gave you the impression that you were allowed to speak to me that way.
gosh.
And
I love that.
it's just like
Yes.
me apologizing for if I've ever done anything in the past to make you mistake me as someone that you could disrespect. Like, I will apologize for what I've done and take that power back from you because this is not a
Yes.
space that there will be disrespect. And
Yes.
that's a
Oh.
really empowering thing to do. And it
Mm-hmm.
disarms the people thinking that they have the power to make you feel small. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, here, let me have that. We're not using that today. We're
Let
not
me
gonna
have
make
that.
me feel small.
Oh.
But I love what you were talking about because all of those things that you were talking about, perfectionism, people pleasing, all of those
Mm-hmm.
sabotage things existed in me. I read the Mountain is
Yeah.
You book.
Yes, it's so good. Such a good book.
That it blew my mind because fear of success was something that I claimed as something I struggled with because I
Same.
I was being successful, but things started happening and I started sabotaging all of my success.
Of course.
And it wasn't until I went to the root and realized that my biggest fear, you were talking about like that primitive brain where it's trying to
Yes.
protect you. My
Yes.
biggest fear was being alone. And
Mm.
I love that you said small little pieces or an event that has traumatized you
Right.
because I've always looked at my birthday from when I was young and my family threw this huge birthday. They rented like caterers, they hired like a karaoke person to come out so we could do karaoke. I invited so many people and one of my sister's friends showed up,
Mm.
and that was traumatizing for me
Yeah.
because I was so embarrassed because I told my family like I invited like 100 people. So like my family was catering and planning for a huge group of people with their parents, with the kids, and it was
That's so
traumatizing for me. But
yeah, of
there
course.
were small instances throughout my childhood where similar things were happening.
Yeah.
And I assumed if I threw this grand party and just told them there's going to be amazing food, there's karaoke, I assumed that that was going to be enough to pull these people to like me, to show up, to be
Wow.
there. And that was traumatizing to me. And because of that, every action I took from there, it was like a web connected to everything I did
Mm.
was I needed to make everyone like me. I needed to be perfect so people would like me. I needed to make sure that everyone's needs were met so that I would be liked.
Yeah.
And when I started gaining success, there was this moment where like I was the underdog and everyone was rooting for me. Then I hit a level of success that they were no longer comfortable with me having that
Mm.
triggered all of them to be like, "Oh, look at him thinking he's so perfect. Oh, so you think you're worthy? You want my money? Look at you. I'm not successful. You're successful. Why should I?" That instantly triggered destroy all your success in me because I
I'm
couldn't
gonna end up alone.
I
Your mind went to, well, I'm gonna end up alone.
yeah. And I people
Yeah.
always say like I've heard people say like the fear of success doesn't exist. And I can agree to it to an extent of it's not the like root, but
Mm-hmm.
it's that surface level of you being fearful of success because I was like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't even celebrate myself. Like I was too scared to be like, yes, I got a huge brand deal. Like I didn't want to announce that because I was like, people are gonna hate that. People are gonna think it's easy money. People are going to like unfollow me. They won't want to support me because this brand just offered me $10,000 to do something with them. I couldn't celebrate it, so it was just like wounding myself
Right.
along the way. But it was such a journey for me to rebuild myself because I destroyed myself almost to rock bottom again because I was like, I can't be up there. And the message that you hear is it's a lonely place at the
Yeah,
top. Like
yeah, it's
that
true.
message for
You hear that
someone
all the
who
time.
fears being alone goes, well, I don't want to be up there. That's scary. I don't want to get old and be alone and die alone in bed. So all of that was something I had to navigate through and heal so that when success came, I could
Mhm.
celebrate it. And when success came, I wasn't fearful.
Yeah.
I acknowledged that I triggered something in those people. And you know what?
Mm,
I'm going to keep going and keep being successful because now I've learned that through my success, though it may trigger some, it also inspires tons of people. It
yes.
shows people
Hmm.
that it's possible. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sitting in that lane now. I'm not
Good
doing
for
this
you.
like destroy all my success because that's a
Right.
really hard place to be in. And I was confused by it when I was in it. I was like, why is this happening? Like, why did I not submit the things I needed to submit in
Right.
that moment? Why didn't I respond back to these people who were like, I'd love to work with you? I was
Right.
just I found every little excuse. I was like, oh, I'm tired. Oh, I've got a lot of brand deal. And I just watched everything that I attracted into my life from
Mhm.
being high vibrational, loving, and doing the things that I loved. I
Right.
watched it become like a repelling thing because my self sabotage turned on and was like, no, you'll be alone. Get rid of all of it.
Right. Oh my goodness, that was such a like beautiful example of literally everything we just talked about. Like personalizing it and making it like real. Thank you for sharing that so vulnerably because I can relate with so much of that too. Pieces of what you said, the fear of success, so relatable. People talk about fear of failure all the time. Fear of success is real. And like you said, it's surface level. There's definitely things that goes deeper beyond that, right? Because at the end of the day, fear of success, what it really was is fear of being alone, right? And that was triggered by an experience that you had. And what the underlying need was a need to feel connection, community, loved, right? And playing small helped you feel that way.
Mhm.
Your perception received it that way, right? You thought if you did those things, it would give you what you needed. And you've realized over time, because again, we don't always realize the sabotage, we're self sabotaging or self preserving in those moments until after. And we're like, why did I do that? You know, and then you're like, wait a second. So props to you for like working on that and overcoming that in such a beautiful way. And I think that a really important part of all of this as we're talking about it is to just, and something that actually Brianna says in her book The Mountain Is You, is that we're, none of us are perfect. We're just human, right? And the fact that you have some self-sabotaging patterns, or the fact that you have fears, or the fact that you have any habits that you're not, that you're wanting to work on, isn't a sign that you're a failure. It's a sign that you're human.
Yeah.
And it's a sign that you have so much potential. You have so much to grow into. And if we didn't if everything was perfect, we would have no purpose on this earth. We would have literally nothing to grow or to adapt to. Like I believe that the purpose of us being here is to evolve, is to grow, is to expand, and to elevate human consciousness and to progress. But if we were perfect, we wouldn't be able to fulfill that purpose. And so that was just a really beautiful example, and I really appreciate you sharing that because that's
Yeah.
reality, and it's so
Yeah.
so so real. I in my own experience have had fear of failure as well, and one of them was being alone, feeling like I wouldn't be able to take my friends or my family with me, right? Or feeling like I was going to miss out on time with my daughter. One of the questions I usually ask clients when it comes to helping them reveal what their fear is, or what the core of their self-sabotaging patterns when it comes to this, I'll ask, what do you fear you have to sacrifice in order to be successful? Do you feel you're going to have to spend more money? Do you feel like you're going to have to spend more time or energy? Do you feel like you're going to have to leave people behind? What is it? Because when you realize that you feel like you have to sacrifice something and lose something, that protection mechanism is going to kick on. It's going to be like, no, 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 no. We don't want to lose love or validation. We don't want to lose time with our
Mhm.
family. We don't want to lose. So of course you're going to be like making excuses like, I'm tired, or no, it's okay, or I don't, and then you're gonna start to think I'm not meant for that, or that's just not for me. All the stories, right? All the stories. But I think the theme here is really understanding the core root and developing that awareness, because that's the only way that you can like master your own mind,
Yeah.
so to speak, and your
Yeah.
emotions.
Yeah. And that fear of being alone, I can look at so many instances where it popped up. Like,
Mm.
I was in a relationship and I got offered a job at BuzzFeed.
Oh
And
man.
instantly it was super exciting. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is an opportunity that barely anyone gets this opportunity. They're reaching out to me. I'm not saying, hey, pick me. They said, hey, we're picking you.
That's
And
awesome.
I was so excited, but I allowed that fear to destroy that opportunity for me because
Mm.
I was like, I'm going to have to move and I'm in a relationship which will be ended if I move.
Right.
And I was like, that fear of being alone could not operate thinking, how can I make this work? It
Right.
instantly was like, oh my gosh, my relationship will end if I don't do this.
Yeah.
But when you start realizing that you are allowing that belief to hold you back from the things that you were so excited about, you
Mm-hmm.
start to develop a resentment for your partner that they don't
Mm-hmm.
deserve because it
Exactly.
wasn't them. It was your fear of losing them that caused you to let go of an opportunity
Yes.
that now you are saying it's your fault.
Yes.
If you didn't make me feel like you wouldn't stick around if I made this decision, I would have done it. But
Totally.
that was my choice in that moment. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
that relationship did not end on a positive note for me. It wasn't necessarily that specific thing that ended it, but I can look back now and go, wow, that same little deep root caused me to make a decision. Granted, I'm very happy with where my life is now. But I will say that my relationship now that I'm in, where I'm in a healthier place with me, we
Yeah.
exist in a healthier communication space that I've never had in any other relationship before. I'm in a space where I communicate everything that I'm
Mm-hmm.
feeling, that I want. I'm not afraid to say, like, what if I move out west because of an opportunity? I'm not fearful that this relationship would end because of that. I know that we are in a space where we could communicate and figure it out. That fear doesn't sit there anymore because I was like, let's go check that route. But like
Yes.
you said, just because you know it's there doesn't mean it doesn't pop up later. We said
Exactly.
it's a spider web that has reached into so many different aspects.
Yes.
When you choose the life of growth, unfortunately, when you grow, you go into new spaces where that trigger was sitting there
Yeah.
waiting to test you to see if you learned your lesson about
Totally. Totally. You always get tested. And
what's
I
the
don't think it's
healthy way.
unfortunate. I think it's fortunate, but I understand that like some people just think like, oh, it's a one and done, or like there's a end, there's a destination. And it's like, no, not really. There's no destination, it's a journey.
Yeah,
You're in it for the long haul or not at all. It's
yeah,
like you either live unconsciously, just like sleeping, basically sleepwalking, or you're very conscious and aware and you're being reminded of that time and time again. And there are times or ebbs and flows. It doesn't mean that you're always going through a challenging time. It just, awareness brings a lot of things to light, and there is a period of time where it can feel challenging and overwhelming to just like hold that and be like, whoa, okay, like now I see all these things and there's this web, and like, oh my god, everything makes so much sense. It can almost feel overwhelming. But that's again why it's so important to have a coach or a guide, a mentor in your life who can help you navigate that. Because even though I always say that you're the solution to your problems, but it doesn't mean you have to solve your problems alone. I have, we're the only ones in our own way, but also like there's perspective that you gain from someone else who's been down that path who can guide you in a much more effective way versus taking this long, winding, painful road by yourself. You can have a much better, much smoother, a more fulfilling experience when you have a guide,
yeah,
to a road you've never been down.
yeah,
So yeah, that's whew, powerful stuff.
yeah. And I think there's so many beautiful ways that we can demonstrate that to people. And
Mhm.
I we self sabotage if we believe something exists. Like, if you don't believe that you're worthy of a loving relationship, you can destroy a loving and worthy relationship because you just don't believe you are worthy of having it.
Exactly.
Like, I love giving the example from like Wicked, because
Mhm.
Alphaba, as soon as she meets Fiero, she instantly like becomes super defensive and says everything that she's ever had to deal with before, assuming that everyone she comes in contact with will treat her the same. And she just
Mhm.
goes, this, and he is like, and the defensiveness, is this a new development? And I'm like, yep, that's there. Because people, if you don't believe a relationship will work, you can destroy it just to prove yourself right.
A
And you're like,
hundred
haha,
percent.
see? And if you don't believe you're worthy
Exactly.
of a raise or a promotion, you can sabotage it by talking negatively and being that negative person at work that doesn't like help people and do the things that is worthy of a promotion, because you've already accepted that you aren't going to be promoted. So why should I act
Exactly.
like someone who will be promoted?
Exactly. You're literally describing the entire process. You just mentioned in that situation, she became defensive because she had a traumatic experience that led her to believe and create a meaning about herself. She was not worthy, right? She made that meaning out of the experience she had, the traumatic experience she had. And as a result, she is now repeating that pattern and sabotaging a healthy relationship because of the beliefs that she has about herself. And what was the key word? Defensive. When do we get defensive? When we feel we need to protect ourselves, when we feel we're not safe, when we feel something is going to happen again and we need to stop it from happening, right? So protecting mechanisms coming on, self-preservation, and then we repeat the pattern, right? And so because she believes that she's not worthy and that she doesn't deserve a good, healthy relationship, her thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and experience will reflect that. And so it's one of those things that once you have that light bulb moment and you realize, like, oh my gosh, that's why this is happening. I feel like it's so empowering because it just makes everything make sense. And that's why I love being on this journey, because my first program that I offer, it's called Awaken, because it's literally you just like waking up and you're just like, oh my God, I'm just like putting all the pieces together. I'm seeing why everything is the way it is. And you're basically going from like sleepwalking on autopilot to like awakened and conscious and intentional. And it's a completely different lifestyle because so many people can just numb these behaviors, forget about it, live with it, and just not realize that it's not a personality that flaw, that it's not just them, that these are things that can be changed, that these are things that they can work on, and they don't have to live feeling stuck or feeling a certain way about their life, repeating that same pattern with unhealthy toxic relationships or whatever it is. And that's actually one of the ones, I have several clients who've had that exact situation where they just kept either attracting um, unhealthy relationships, or just essentially self-sabotaging the ones that were good, right? And expecting to have a similar experience. And so even with your situation, I know that you didn't take that opportunity that you were granted with BuzzFeed, and that relationship didn't work out, but it all sounds like it was for you to get to this place too. So our experiences lead us to where we are. And at some point, we have to decide who we want to be again, who we want to become. And if we are ready to step into the version of ourselves that's actually going to take us to our dream reality and to our goal, the vision that we have for our life. When are we going to be ready to say goodbye to the version of us? Thank you so much. You protected me and you kept me safe for all this time, but I no longer require your support. I'm stepping into my highest self because I know they're going to take me to the next level. I know they're going to take me where I need to go because that's the life that's destined for me. And deep inside, I know it's possible. I know it's meant for me. And I'm going to say goodbye to this life. And you have to kind of mourn it a little bit, and let it go and then step into that next level, that next version of you that's waiting for you to choose it.
Yeah. And I know that we're close to the end of our
Yeah.
call, but I wanted to say, like, that's that's the beautiful part about most coaches is we've gone through that evolution.
Yeah.
And once you go through that, once you experience, not that we don't stop growing, we
Yeah.
forever are going through new evolutions.
Totally.
But once you have like that breakthrough out of that haze, walking in the fog life, you want to
Mhm.
do that for everyone. You're like, oh my God, you all deserve this. And like the
Yes.
reason coaches have that energy of just like, oh my gosh, like, wake up, come
Yes.
on, join
Literally, like,
me.
wake up. This is what's
it,
waiting for you on the other
it's
side.
it's crazy because
Totally.
so many people who are in that
Yeah.
haze or in that sleepwalking state, they see us as kind of like crazy out there. You're just like too much.
Yeah.
And it's because they don't have that feeling of knowing how beautiful it is to exist out of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of times coaches will go into that fog
Mhm.
at risk of their own mental health and their own progress because going back in can be damaging to us still.
Yeah.
And we're like reaching out a hand for anyone who will take it
Mhm.
because we know everyone can get out of that and everyone
Mhm.
has something beautiful on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And I look back at moments when I heard like The Secret and Thinking Positive,
Yeah.
and I would sit there and kind of be like, it's not that simple.
Yeah, everyone's like,
I,
well, it's not that easy. Easier said than done. Like, well, of course, but
uh, it's so interesting to look back at the version of me that looked at some of the people in this world and I was just like, you guys are just too much. And then I fall into that and realize my vibrational energy has attracted such a beautiful thing that I'm just jumping up and down and enjoying life. I tell people all the time, like, I have to constantly tell myself that what I'm doing, because every day I'm
Mm,
super excited about what I'm doing, that is work.
yeah.
And this